All right, welcome everybody to another Build Fly Go video. So I just uploaded a video on my flight to Canada, and when I came back, I was talking to a few people, and they asked, "How do you do that?" It seems like it's an insane number of forms and requests and decals and all sorts of things that you need. So I'm gonna do a quick overview of all of the things that you need um, to do an international flight to Canada. Uh, of course, this is, make sure all of this is correct before you do it. But I believe this is what I had going on. So you need things for your airplane and you need things for you. You need a radio station license for your airplane. You may or may not have one already. A custom sticker. You need a new one every year. They're on the calendar year. And you're going to need a 12-inch end numbers. For you, you need a restricted radio telephone operator permit. That's good forever. You get it once. You need a passport, of course, and you're going to need some cash to pay for all of this stuff. On the airplane, the radio station license is not too bad. These FCC forms are a bit of a mess because you need a form and then you need another form to pay for the first form, and there's different places that you go for the different ones. There's a lot of good information on this online, so I'm not going to cover all of it. FCC Form 605 is the main one that you need, and there's also a Schedule C, which is the one that talks about aircraft radio service. This is valid for 10 years. You can renew, I think, 90 days before it expires. And then the form that you need for the actual paying of the form is Form 159. This isn't too bad. You go to the FCC website on this, search for uh, restricted radio telephone operator license for you, and I think it's radio telephone radio station license for the airplane. Um, and then you just go through it. You're going to have to register on an FCC website. And then once you have that registered, you can log in and fill out the form online for both. I believe for the 159 and the 605 and Schedule C all online. It doesn't take too long. I believe I got the email the next day with the PDF of both of the forms, so no big deal. Then you do need the customs sticker. You have to register on the Department of Homeland Security CBP website. You want an aircraft sticker, and you want to pay the annual user fee. And once you register, you can log in. Very simple. This one is really easy. And I think it's about $30 for the sticker, if I remember right. It was not expensive. This sticker, when I registered and requested my sticker, it took, I think, 2 months for it to show up. It was right when the government shutdown, the most recent government shutdown, was going on. So it took a while, but I have heard that these take a while. And if I remember correctly, they said I could fly with the printed receipt that I got. Double check that. Don't risk it. And yes, and these expire at the end of the year. The sticker itself is a little square and it's got the year number on it. So mine has a 9 on it. So at the end of this year, that's expired. So definitely, I plan on getting the 2021 as soon as I can. For you, you need the restricted radio telephone operator permit. It is also done on FCC Form 605 on that same website. You also need Form 159, which is the fee processing form. It's about $70. This one's good forever. It's a shame that the more expensive one isn't the one that's good forever, but oh well. And of course, you're going to need a passport for you and everybody in the airplane. Don't forget that. You only need one restricted radio telephone operator permit per. I think the PIC has to have it. But anyway, so let's think about the flight a little bit. So USA to Canada. You file a flight plan. You need a flight plan for this. I file IFR because I find filing IFR to be easier because you don't have to deal with calling so and so radio to activate your flight plan, etc., etc. You have it active from the takeoff, and they take care of closing it for you on the other end. I just find that easier to do. you need to go to the EAPIS website to file. It's yet another federal website. You're going to have to register, and I believe the EAPIS one took a few days for them to approve my registration. So make sure to, if you're thinking about ever doing an international flight, register for EAPIS and get your other forms out of the way. The EAPIS website, you're going to have to tell them who's in the airplane, who you are, who the crew are, passport information, and all this kind of information that you would expect for a border crossing. When you're going to be doing the border crossing, which airport are you taking off from, and which airport are you landing at? And when you're expecting to cross the border, which is sort of interesting. So when I did this flight, the border crossing was over the Detroit River. So basically, I said it's a free form little form at the bottom, and I said, crossing over the Detroit River 8 miles east of DTW Airport at, I think it was like 10:45 a.m. or something like that. They want a fairly accurate time and location there. But you have some idea of where you're going to be crossing, right? Because this part of the flight is going to be pretty prescriptive. Once you file that, you're going to receive a confirmation email. Read the confirmation email and make sure it says that these people are approved to do this flight. It should be in bold and blinking, but it's actually in the sort of in the paragraph that's saying that you're approved. Just double check. Then you have to call CanPass, which is the Canadian border people, 2 hours before takeoff. You're going to tell them effectively the same thing that's on the EAPIS: who you are, who's going there, when you're going, and where you're landing. You have to land at an airport of entry, of course. And that was pretty simple. Very nice, like they were very nice on the phone. I called the day before. I think you can call up to 48 hours ahead. I just called the day before because I didn't want to deal with figuring out, okay, is it 2 hours out yet? And that should say 2 hours before takeoff. Anyway, before you cross the border, you need to have a transponder code. You don't want to be waving at the people in the jets, in the F-16s. If you're doing this flight anyway, you're going to have a flight plan, but make sure you have a transponder code. Don't do this without flight following. And of course, when you land, you're either going to be told to taxi to a certain place, or if it's a more laid-back airport like Windsor was, the border patrol is going to just follow you in their little car to where you park. And don't get out of the airplane. Hand them your passport, or if they say that it's fine for you to get out of the airplane, go ahead. But do not step away from the airplane until they're happy with you. It took me, I think, 3 minutes to do this. They had followed me to where I parked the airplane. I opened the canopy. They were out of the car. They walked up, said hello, asked me how I was doing, asked for my passport. I handed them my passport. They asked me what I was doing there, if I was going to spend the night, when I was going home. And then they handed me back my passport, and they handed me a little strip of paper with the ID number. You want to make sure that you have the ID number that says you're all good. And they wished me a great day, and that was that. Easy enough. Very nice. For the return, it was surprisingly just as easy. You file a flight plan again. Again, I filed IFR. This was actually interesting because I did my... the one thing that was complicated for me on this flight was I was doing this on a weekend, and I was doing it after hours. It was like 5 p.m. when I crossed the border. So I had to make sure that I was flying into an airport of entry that had CBP officers there 24/7, or at least for the hours I was there. So I flew into Detroit City Airport, Kilo Delta Echo Tango. You have to call an hour before arrival, which is different from CanPass. CanPass is 2 hours before takeoff, and CBP is an hour before arrival. Detroit City Airport is an 8-mile flight from Windsor Airport, so it was basically an hour before takeoff for me. It was the shortest IFR flight I have ever done, but it was easy enough. It was, again, you have to file EAPIS, who you are, who's in the airplane, when you're going to cross the border. Again, I said Detroit River, 8 miles east of blah, 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 and where I'm going, where I'm coming from, that kind of thing. Have a transponder code before crossing. Again, You want to be on an active flight plan with a transponder code. This was one of the reasons that I really did this one IFR, was because it's an 8 mile flight. So by the time I was in the air, I was already in Detroit airspace, just under the Bravo, and it would have been a huge hassle for me to then try and get sort out the transponder stuff. So I just filed IFR, so I had a transponder code before taking off. When you land, do not get out of the airplane. You will taxi to where CBP is. So usually it's like a big red rectangle on the floor, on the ramp that you taxi into. You tell Tower that that's what you're doing, or the airport will have a frequency for CBP. Don't get out of the airplane. Let me say that again. They will come to you, and they're going to ask you a bunch of questions. They're going to look at your passport. Um, and at which point I asked them, "Can I get out of the airplane?" And they walked off with my passport, which I'm never happy when that happens. But they walked off with my passport to check it, or I don't know what they were doing. And 2 minutes later, they walked out. I was just taking a look at the airplane and getting ready to get some gas and get ready to go. 2 minutes later, they came out, handed me a passport, and said, "Have a nice day." Um, this is all very easy. The gotchas here are, don't screw up the steps. I have heard that they get very angry if you show up unannounced. They they also get very angry if you show up and you're very late, or if you're early, or if you're very early, or things like that. I would say plus or minus a half hour is probably fine, but if you're off by hours, they're going to be upset. I have heard that they can make your life pretty difficult if they get upset. So this is simple. There's a lot of steps. The majority of it you do way ahead of time, and you effectively don't have to do again, right? Like the radio station license and the radio telephone operator permit, you do it. You don't have to think about it for 10 years. 12-inch end numbers. I used tape because I don't have 12-inch end numbers on my airplane. You just need them for the border crossing, and some other countries need them. So I used painter's tape on the side of the airplane, and it worked fine. It was pretty torn up. The CBP guys were pretty amused by the painter's tape on both ends. They were just like, they had no idea what it was about, and they were curious. It's an FAA thing, and the CAA, or whatever it's called in other countries. It's not a CBP thing, so they don't know what that's all about. Make sure your passport's not expired. But yeah, so subscribe, and I will hopefully talk to you guys again soon. Thank you.